Welcome to our 20th session of running these relationship skills workshops in a fun way. I appreciate you all being here every week. Welcome. Like and retweet the room so we can teach as many people as we can about relationship skills and just increase love in the world as much as we can. I am Kimia Shahzadi, the founder of Love Story Unicorns, who has a background in clinical behavioral psychology. That's where I got my master's in, and I specialize in relationships and have written papers on it that have been published and things like that. And my whole thing is skills, not pills, and let's try and teach these relationship skills as much as we can, because we don't get taught them in school. And unless you had incredible parents that really role modeled great behavior, how else would you learn it? So this is a space where we can learn together, and I want to empower all of you all to be relationship experts, because no matter how hard you try, you can't avoid relationships. They're all around you, and it doesn't have to be romantic relationships. It can be with your family, with your friends, with your coworkers, just people everywhere. So relationships are all around us, and the better we can get at them, the better life can be. So let's jump in. I wanted to say a huge surprise that in the last week since doing a love workshop at NFT Detroit Con, I paired up with Wild Guardians and Invisible Enemies, and we are collabing, and we're starting a new Twitter space called Wild Invisible Unicorns, and we're still figuring out the date for it, but we're thinking the 7th of every month, same time, 8 p.m., and it's just going to be a mental health space, and we're just going to have all of our 3 communities combined. And I'm very appreciative of how kind they are. Honestly, they have huge communities, both of them, and they're veterans, and I just have so much respect for them, and their kindness, honestly, has just blown me away. So keep that at the back of your mind. It would be amazing to see you guys there, and we'll have some relationship stuff, we'll have some breathing stuff, we'll have everything we can pack and cram into 1 hour that would help people's mental health. We're going to try and do our best. So the first one likely starting on 7th of August. More information coming soon. Another thing I wanted to touch on at the very start of today's session is we've been consistently doing these skills sessions every week on Thursdays, and for the next 3 weeks I'm actually going to Europe for the first time with my husband Armand, who's in the room right now, and we're super excited. We leave on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, and I'm going to be running some relationship skills workshops in London, which is super exciting, in Hyde Park and some different places, and then we're going to Paris and Santorini. So the next 3 weeks I will not be running Twitter Space classes, but I will do my best to record 3 skills in a quick short video, and I'll schedule to post them at 8 p.m. on Thursdays, so you'll have something to look to with that normal time. But just be aware that I will be in Europe and on holiday, and I'm so excited. I've always wanted to go to Santorini and Paris and even London, so dream come true coming my way, which I'm excited about. All right, let's draw it back to today's session. So at any point today, I would love it. I get so happy when people request to speak or unmute themselves. You don't need to put your hand up or anything like that. Just speak away or request to speak, and I'm happy to bring you up. We learn so much better when we hear more voices and we hear different perspectives, and we can talk it through, and the sessions just become so much more fun that way. Awesome. So just keep that in mind. At any point, you can request to speak. All right. At this point, I just wanted to give the audience space in case there's any relationship questions they have that they came across this week, or any stories they want to share, any comments they want to make. I'll just give you guys the floor for a second in case that's something that you want to bring up. Awesome. Well, let's recap last week's lesson. So last week's lesson was on trust, and the main take-home messages we had from last week is it sucks to be honest. It's there's discomfort there. It's probably going to turn into an argument if it's not something easy to hear, but it's so much more worth it to go through that discomfort and be honest, and then get the long-term happiness which follows when you're able to go through hard things to get to the other side and get happiness. If you avoid that short-term conflict or that short-term discomfort, it will catch up to you eventually, and it's quite hard to mend a trust when it's broken. It's not impossible to mend trust, and one of the things we talked about, the steps to take when trust is broken, and it can be like someone told a lie, or it could be someone cheated on you to that extreme. The process is quite similar. So first you have to decide, with the information you have now, are you ending things right now, or are you going to keep giving this a go? And if you are going to keep giving this a go, what is your boundary? How long are you willing to give this a go to see improvement? And so if you decide to go, if it's your boundaries have been crossed, all good. If you decide to stay, then you figure out, your boundaries of how long. And then the person that has been lied to, that person needs to not bring up the past anymore, which is really hard for that person to wrap their head around, because it's so painful and hurtful, and you want to keep throwing it in their face for sure, and you would feel like you have every right to, which is fair enough as well. And the thing is, I'm not asking people to forgive or forget, but make a decision that if they do want to give this their best go and give that person a chance to improve, that they don't bring up the past anymore. And on the other end, the person that did break the trust, they need to be doing everything in their power to try and mend what was broken, and take all the steps they need to be able to inch back more and more trust and be able to gain it back through their behavior. And so in those situations, it is possible to recover when the trust is broken. And even in the situation of cheating, 33% of relationships can still last, even with cheating, if they kind of take this approach. It's very easy for it to fall apart if they take other avenues, or they keep bringing up the past, or the other person doesn't show any improvement, all sorts of things. But at least now you have some sort of framework for how to handle when trust is broken, because it's very scary and it's very confusing if it ever happens to you, and I really hope it doesn't. But you're not alone. You're not the only one going through this. If this happens to you, welcome to the new people in the room. So happy to have you here. So we're just recapping last week's topic on trust. I want to ask you guys if there's anything you wanted to bring up about trust, or anything that we've talked about so far. Just give you guys a moment. Okay. All right. Moving on. And at any point, if you have questions, guys, feel free to request to become speaker. And if you're a speaker, just unmute yourself. Okay. So today's topic is on balancing independence and togetherness. So in general, if both partners are truly happy with being more independent or together, that's fine. I'm not going to cause, trouble where there's no trouble. But if there's a problem with one of the people in the relationship, where one is annoyed or both people are annoyed, that's when we have to figure this thing out. So in psychology, this topic of independence and togetherness is kind of termed as attachment styles. And so there's healthy attachment, there's anxious attachment, which is more the together one, and there's the avoidant attachment, which is more the independence one. And the theory behind the whole attachment theory pretty much is they put a lot of weight on how you were raised, like with your caregivers that raised you, that shape which side of these spectrums you fall on. And we all fall on these spectrums somewhere, and it's a dimension. So we can move from one side of the spectrum to the other. It's not like you're trapped in a box that you can't get out of. But these are kind of general patterns that they're trying to get at. So, for example, if your parents, were always at work, and, they always encouraged you to be independent and do your own thing, and they didn't give you much, coddling or any, they kind of just said, go out and do it, then you're more likely to just be more avoidant or independent, however you want to phrase it. And so you can naturally have, a different level of connection with other people because of how you thought it was normal when you were raised. On the other hand, if parents were, super protective, they're like, we're not going to let you go on your own. I have to know where you are at all times, all of this, then we can just very naturally adopt some of this anxious or togetherness tendencies more than other people. And then there's also the situation where, parents, sometimes don't have the best, relationship skills, and they can be really inconsistent. So, they can be, really warm and loving and show so much care and, always want to know kind of what you're doing. And then on the other side of the spectrum, they can also just out of nowhere go from 0 to 100 and just get so mad out of nowhere, out of the blue for you. And it's really hard for a child to understand what happened and, why they were so close and then so distant. So that is something that can cause someone to also be avoidant and be anxious. And so there's that combination too. And it's for that person, it's so confusing for them to figure out kind of human behavior because there's no reliable pattern that they were able to learn as a child. And so that, it's not the fault of the person that they had these parents that or caregivers that kind of shaped them this way. So, everybody has their own cocktail mix of whatever they grew up with. That's okay. And when you get in a relationship, you have to figure out kind of what what cocktail mix your partner is. And then, there's no judgment on either side, but you want to get to a place where you guys can figure it out together and realize that it's not that they don't love you or you don't love them. There's other things at play, and we can work it out to make sure that, everyone's feelings are being acknowledged and heard. So I wanted to give you some real life examples. And I just wanted, when I talk about, I did write papers on attachment theory and publish them. So this is like a field I know a lot about, but I think it's really important not to get too caught up in attachment styles. Like, just because your parents, raised you like this and, you might feel like you're more avoidant or anxious, it's not a way of life that you have to stick with forever. It's just, it's something that may have contributed, but it's not permanent. So, and it's not an excuse to hide behind if you're hurting your partner by doing this. So it's really important to keep in mind that every single day we have a choice, and the more informed and knowledgeable we become, we can make better decisions. So you're not I want you to know that if you find out you're one attachment or the other, it's not the end of the world. It's very changeable. It's okay. We don't have to repeat the patterns that our parents gave us. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so I wanted to give you some real life examples of my husband and I, just so you guys can kind of grasp some of these scenarios and feel like it's okay. So I have a more probably on the anxious side, so the more together side of the relationship spectrum of attachment, and my husband is more on the avoidance side. We're within healthy limits. We figured things out, but just naturally this is where we fall. So for a long time at the beginning of our relationship, and we did 5 years of international long distance. So as you can imagine, when that distance closed, I was just like so excited to be with him, and would be with him all the time, and I would hold his hand all the time, and he,
It was a lot.
It was a lot. And Armand, do you want to tell the rest of the story? Like, he held it in for a really long time, and he didn't tell me that it was just too much hand holding. Armand, jump in here with your side of the story. I don't want to take up all of the speaking space.
Well, with hand holding in particular, I think that was before we had, closed the gap. There were times in Australia where I would come visit you for a month while we were still long distance, and you would just always hold my hand. And, I was, I'm a little bit taller than you, so it just felt like I couldn't move normally. It's just walk, I don't know, my strides or whatever. It just wasn't happening for me. Movement wasn't happening. My hand would get super hot, and I don't know. So.
And then one day he was brave, and he told me how he was feeling, that it's not personal. He just he feels like he.
One day I amputated my hand.
Oh my goodness, please! It's honesty is the better policy here, guys. Yeah. So
it was the only way.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so one day he told me, and it was obviously hard to hear. But then I don't know how long it took me. I can't remember now how long it took me to be okay with this. But I think we figured out. I think we were troubleshooting, and I was like, what if I hold your hand like this, a different way? Or then I was holding his arms. I wasn't even holding his hand anymore. And then we figured out that he prefers me holding his arm, and I actually prefer holding his arm. And that's a lot more easier for him to move around in and feel not restricted. And I don't know, it just feels nicer for me. So that was just a really cool thing. We were able to be, I don't know how long it took us, but we were very mature about the conclusion of this situation, where we knew it's not that he doesn't love me or, I love him too much. It's okay. We're both approaching this, with love, and we can figure out a way where we can, please both people. And so that's just, a good example of showing how that can work. Another one is, I don't know, before I move on, Armand, was there anything else you wanted to say about that one that you think is good for people to know?
I don't know, just that it took a while. I feel like when you say it sounds like it was one conversation. No, this was probably over months and months of times of saying I don't like it, but then you're but we're only here together for, one more week. I'm oh, fine, okay. And yeah, so it wasn't even when you came here, there was some, stuff going on there. I don't think we were apart a whole day for a very long time. But just these sorts of things, I don't know. It just wasn't fast.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That's a good point. And when I moved here to the United States from Australia, I came during lockdown. So we were literally together all the time. And it was good. And then, well, it was good for me. And then things opened up, and I don't know, and then we started missing each other more when, we would go do our own things, and then we adjusted to that new normal. So yeah, I don't want you guys to think that like these things usually get resolved and like as soon as you bring it up you guys are going to figure this out so quickly. It takes time, and that's okay. I know for you guys to know a bit of my history, so I had an abusive father and his family, so I'm naturally going to have that some problems with how I was brought up where things weren't healthy. So there's part of that involved as well, but it's not something that is going to ruin all your relationships. Like you can definitely learn the skills to be able to have healthy relationships. Another one I want you guys to think about, just to be able to think of these examples about attachment styles. So, when someone says, oh, I want to spend more time with you or something like that, we all assume generally that that means that, we have to spend 100% of undivided attention together for it to count. And sometimes for people, it means a lot to them, even if you were both doing your own thing in the same room. So, for example, like he's reading. Wait, I see your hand. Go for it, Armand.
I think something you talk about a lot is people's definition of spending time together is much different. There are a lot of times when we were talking about something and I thought we were spending time together, but it's like, no, actually, it just wasn't doing it for you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, that happens quite a lot. Like we'll be talking and he'll be like, this is quality time, right? And I'm like, no. Like it is not. And then we like try and figure out like what is something that I think is quality time, or what does he think is something that's quality time. So and then we try and figure it out, and it isn't like a huge quick fix. So yeah, that's a good point. And where I was going to with the second example is doing stuff together in the same room could be something that potentially both of you find enjoyable. Reading together in the same room, or like both doing your work, each of your own work in the same room. Like even that could be something where you're not saying that you don't want to spend time with them, but maybe this could be a solution for you being able to do your own thing and them still being happy that they get to be happy that you guys are in the same room. So that could be another example. I want to ask you guys, I want to throw some questions at you guys. So we established kind of in general, if both people are truly happy with their situation, like we're not going to get involved and create conflict. But if one person is annoyed or both people are annoyed, then it's something that we kind of need to address. So let's kind of dive into some questions that make us think. So what about couples who choose to sleep in different rooms in the house? What do we think of this one? I really want your opinions on this one. So anyone who's brave enough to be a speaker and come up, we would love to hear from you. Got a shy crowd today. That's okay. All right, Armand, what do you think of this? Oh, I got a request. I'm so excited. The Canna Man. Love to hear from you.
I'm happy to be here. It's been a while since I've come up and talked in spaces. I used to love doing it a lot. Now I just kind of, sometimes if I randomly come in, yeah, we'll see. But I figure I'll share a thought or two on this one because, why not? Spirit of conversation. But
Yay.
the relationships are definitely something that I've studied from the perspective of being in one with somebody who'd been through quite a bit of trauma in her life. And by that being said, the requirements to how to show love, how to be there for them, how to support, everything was so much different, so much more complex because every day it was a different, kind of thing. So in all of that, I've looked at a lot of different other people's relationships to kind of get a semblance of or a sense of like kind of what's normal or what makes sense or things like that. And in that particular one, of course, it's always dependent on the situation, always depends on the history of each individual, what they've been through and, what makes them comfortable. But in my opinion, it's either one of two things. It's either very healthy or very unhealthy. On the healthy end, they've probably communicated, they've discussed whatever reasons, whatever they've been through, and they've come to a mutual understanding that, this is the best for both of us. Maybe they get their quality time during the day, maybe they do other things, but the other half is the unhealthy side. And I think that's more our problems became so great that our solution was just to literally, like you're talking with avoidance, just avoid the problems, where they just go, you know what, if we don't see each other, we're not fighting, and we can live. And you can live both ways, but I mean, one way has a little bit less love and enjoyment and kind of music and art in it, in my opinion, because love is hand in hand with those. And, it's all that we can grow if we want to, but we have to want to.
Wow, I loved your last sentence, and I really resonate with that. Honestly, you can't, even though I do psychology, I can't make someone change if they don't want to change. I can't make someone grow or improve if they don't want to grow. And that was a really hard lesson I had to learn with my own father because, with everything he did, he never acknowledged he did anything wrong to us. And that's like the first step. Like, you need to be able to acknowledge that something's wrong to be able to then take the steps of wanting to improve. So I had to learn that from a young age, that not everybody wants to improve. And, we have to accept that when people don't. And, choose, make our own decisions of what's best for us, and kind of, take care of ourselves. So with this one, you brought up, healthy and unhealthy ways of approaching it. And I think that's such a good perspective to bring up, because there is a distinction between healthy and unhealthy and how we handle it. And that all goes into how we handle conflict resolution, for sure. And there's so much there. And I can there's so many skills I can teach on that. And we try and tackle, different ones at different weeks. But I think the overall one is, whenever you're feeling annoyed, even a little bit, or frustrated, it's better to bring it up and then keep it in. And I know avoiding it is so much easier, but if they're not handling it in a way that you guys can figure it out, then those skills of it's not okay to keep repeating the same patterns of bad conflict. We have to break those cycles and get better at it. And if they're not willing to grow, there's not much you can do there. But then you have to decide if you're with the right person. But if they are showing signs of willing to grow, there's so much room of things we can do. And just a quick one, I won't go into it because we've touched on this skill in the past, and it's just a good reminder for people that even have heard it. So whenever someone's upset and they bring something up, you always want to bring up the behavior that you're upset about. You never want to attack someone's character. So you never say you're a liar, you're selfish. Those things are unacceptable, because as soon as you attack someone's character, they don't, they start thinking about the wrong things. They're like, I'm not this sort of person, or am I this sort of person? Or, it's just so much harder to think you can change something if it's being thrown at you like it's your character. But if you say, this behavior that you did, I didn't like it, it made me feel this way. It's so much easier to be able to change a behavior than think about what it means if someone attacks your character. So please always attack the behavior. And then from there, whenever, us humans do that to someone else, like, our human response is to get defensive. And so usually, and I see this so often, someone will say they're upset, and then the other person will be like, I'm upset too. I'm upset about this. And now you have two people upset, and you're not going to get very far trying to resolve a conflict when two people are upset. So the good skill to learn from this one is who got upset first and verbalized it. And so that's a way to change the patterns of how you guys argue. So you would first say the behavior that upset you and made you feel whatever, and then you say what you want that will help make the situation better. And a lot of us don't think about what we want. We're just very quick to, just get upset, and sometimes we don't even verbalize it, and we just let it bottle up and get worse. But we need to figure out what we want to make the situation better. So then you say what you want, and the person who's receiving that, information that you're upset, instead of getting defensive, their first response needs to be, some sort of validation, like, I hear you. I really like the line, I hear you, because you don't have to agree with them. You're just acknowledging that you heard what they say. And that immediately, can calm them down a bit. And then your next sentence is pretty much giving them what they asked for. If you have the capacity to give it, you give it. If you can't give exactly what they want, then you give them a version of it that you can, a compromise version. And, then you negotiate until you find something that you can give that they would really appreciate. And that really diffuses the conflict very quickly. And then once they've calmed down, and if you're still upset about something, then you can say, well, okay, I want to address something that I'm upset about. And now they've calmed down enough to take the supportive role and hear what you want, and then do that for you. And in theory, this sounds, very, great and easy to do. And in real life, it's hard to do, and it takes a lot of practice. And just so you guys know, to this day, sometimes, like, Armin and I will have an argument, and thank goodness I've taught him these skills. I've repeated them so much that he can sometimes catch me when he says he's upset about something, and then, I'm just being a human and I get defensive. And he's like, wait, I got upset first. And I'm like, whoa, you're right. And then I have to, just practice the things that I say myself. And just pivot. Armand, I see your hand.
It just feels good that there's a standard. I'm not usually the best at expressing what I want. And, in a lot of cases, I don't know if other people feel like this, but if you feel like there's a double standard, like, hey, when I do something, it's not okay, but when you do it, it's okay. And yeah, it's just really nice about this get upset first thing, because it feels like there is a standard that we've agreed to, that I can point to it and be like, these are the rules we've decided on. So it's nice.
Yeah. Thank you, Armand. Yeah, absolutely. So these things take time to practice and learn, but they're so valuable. And I know for a really long time, like Armand didn't even realize like he had a choice in a lot of the things that we do. And I just assumed he knew he always had a choice, but he always wanted to make me happy. But he would do things that he wouldn't feel comfortable with and then feel bad about later. And then he could feel more distant towards me just naturally. And it's because all of these things have bottled up, and, you know, he didn't say what he needed to say at the time that he felt it. And so that's such an important thing. And so I'm so glad that, you know, we've been able to create like, you know, a framework where, you know, there is no double standards and everyone is on the same page. And, you know, he realizes he does have rights to be able to say all the things he wants to say. And that as soon as he says the things that upset him and what he needs, he realizes very quickly that he can get the things that he wants. But just those patterns weren't in place before to be able to, you know, help him be able to, you know, say those things. And for me to understand what, you know, is really important to him. So, you know, there's a lot to unpack in the conflict resolution for sure. So if we draw it back to just in general with my thoughts on, you know, if I hear that a couple is sleeping in different rooms in the house and, you know, I hear like one of them is upset or both of them is upset, you know, there's deeper issues here. You know, there's some things that, you know, they must feel like they can't resolve, that, you know, this is the easiest way to deal with it and just be able to manage through. So I would, you know, if they came to me, I would really dig deep and realize it's not that they're sleeping in different rooms for like whatever surface level reason they're saying. There's, you know, usually a lot more deeper things at play here that we would need to address and fix those things. And then, you know, the sleeping in the same room will most likely just, you know, fix itself on its own when those deeper things are addressed. Another one that I want to throw at you guys is, you know, having a partner work in person and the other partner works from home, or, you know, they just stay at home. So that can also create some sort of natural difference, because one person is hanging out with people all day in person, and, you know, the other person that's at home, you know, as soon as your partner comes home, they're like, you know, your human contact for the day. And so you can just be like so excited to see them and just want to spend so much time with them, and they're just exhausted from all the people they've talked to and all the things they've had to do. And so that's not, your partner doesn't want to spend time with you or doesn't love you. There's just a natural difference there that we'll have to you know, figure out. And, you know, for a lot of people, you know, it might be a warm welcome when the partner comes home, but then they get a 20-minute break of no interruptions where they can just like decompress. And then, you know, you can talk as much as you want or whatever it is that you normally do. But there usually is some difference there that needs to be addressed, and ignoring it is just going to make it feel worse. And I want you guys to pay very close attention to this. So it's really important. So don't ignore your feelings. Bottling is bad. Be honest, because when you ignore these feelings and you're like, oh, I'm just a little annoyed, I won't bring it up, or I don't want to create conflict, I won't bring it up. When we do this and we ignore our feelings, it exacerbates our attachment style. So if you are naturally, you know, more anxious, if you ignore these feelings and don't say them, you will become more anxious. And same, if you are more avoidant and you don't want to bring it up, it makes you more avoidant. Hand up, I see it, go for it.
I just wanted to touch on too. For some people, they're afraid to vocalize those kinds of emotions because a previous relationship was abusive, and they're conditioned to not vocalize those emotions. So just a reminder on the same tangent: if you're afraid to vocalize those emotions, the point of a relationship, or one of the big points, is being able to rely on each other on that emotional level to offer that opportunity for growth. So if you open up and express your emotions to your partner, your significant other, and you get good responses, you can then trust it and do it again. If you get a bad response, it's like clear as day. You're probably in the wrong situation, or maybe need to address something in a different fashion. That's the point, to take a step back and just, you know, think for a second. But don't ever be afraid to express emotions, because it's the same thing. It's damaging in the long run if you keep them bottled inside.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you. And I thank you so much for coming up and speaking. Honestly, you're adding so much value to the space. So thank you. I really appreciate you. Everything you said was spot on. Thank you. Thank you. And another difference that, you know, is something that can usually cause a difference is if someone, you know, doesn't have many of their own goals or interests or friends or hobbies. That can also kind of exacerbate this difference in closeness and independence. And one of the things is attraction is usually when we observe our partner from a close distance of admiring them. So if you can, so they're not so far away that you're like squinting to see them, and they're not like right in front of your face, but they're like, you know, I don't even know how to describe how much more forward, and I'm still on the metric system. I haven't fully adapted to America, but, you know, just like you can see their full body up and down, and, you know, you see them doing something, and it's usually, you know, doing something that they enjoy. It's lighting them up. They're passionate about it, and seeing them like that, and, you know, just happy and successful and doing what they love, that's one of the big things that make us feel attracted to someone else. So if you're always super close to each other, you're just not giving yourself that space to be able to have that sort of attraction back. Or if they're always so distant from you, it's hard to see that as well, because it's not even there. So that's another thing to keep in mind, that if your partner is a musician, like going and watching their performances and seeing them do what they love, or if your partner is giving a speech somewhere, even for work, going and seeing them give that speech. All of these things are really good to kind of build that attraction for us that we want in healthy ways. So that's something little to keep in mind. Does anyone have any questions or stories or comments before we jump into our Reddit questions? Yes, hand. Go for it.
I don't want to take up too much time, but I do have a brief story for exactly on the subject you were talking about.
I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So there's a time years ago before I have a 4-year-old son, and it's a long story. I won't go into any details, but me and my ex are no longer together at this point for different reasons. But earlier in our relationship, I was working full-time retail finance. So like 40, 50-hour weeks, traveling 40 minutes each way, give or take, to and from. And it was basically get up, go to work, come home, super emotionally burned out from work all the time. And I was just learning what emotional burnout was and how to deal with it. So it was just, I had no energy. And my ex needed and craved a lot of attention for a lot of different reasons. Again, there was the traumatic history and things like that. And I was always the type to give a lot emotionally. So it kind of worked out. But I found myself being super, super, super drained after work. And she'd, of course, really want to engage with me. Because on top of everything, she was actually disabled. So she just lived at home with her parents and, kind of did her thing, played music, did art. But I was primarily her social interaction. And very quickly into that kind of where I felt the toll of work and I just had no energy and I didn't want to engage. And it's like I loved her and I cared, but I just didn't have it in me. I kind of had this aha moment. I can't really define it too well, but it was where I realized that it was from where and how much I loved her. I had to be patient with myself, with the situation, with her, and understand that some of her needs were a bit of that immediate interaction and things like that. And the most important thing for me was communication. And we came to things like we'll interact for a little bit and then I'll go do something else for a bit and then we'll come together and regroup, or we'd pick like one day of the week and have like a date night or something specific and scheduled so that she had something to look forward to and could be all excited and plan for it, and it took up some of her day. So the biggest thing was communication and patience and coming to those and taking the time for those because of how much you love the other person. So that's just my little tidbit to throw in there.
That was such a spot-on example. Thank you so much, Canaman, for telling it. Yeah, that's just exactly the kind of example that would have been perfect for that. So thank you. I think we all took something important from that one. Thank you. All right. If there's no one else that wants to share anything, I'll just give you guys a moment in case anyone else wants to share a story that they thought of, maybe inspired by the Canaman. Okay, everyone's just taking it in and visualizing it. Okay. All right. So Reddit questions. So let's practice some of these skills that we learn about attachment, so closeness and independence, with real life questions from real life people. So we've got a 24-year-old female and a 26-year-old male. And the subject line is, I feel smothered by my fiance. And then the backstory is, here's the plain truth. My fiance is not the problem. I know it's me. I constantly like my own space and independence, and he never gives me crap for it. We see each other once a week, if that, and he never complains. He's always been very confident in his independence as well and has never been an issue. For some reason, I've been wanting to have more time to myself and just want to be alone. I don't know why this is happening, but I don't want to push my partner away. I love him and our relationship, and I know he isn't the issue here. I just want any advice for navigating this weird situation and why this has happened. I have always been like this in all relationships, so I know this isn't individual specific. I just would love some advice on how to diminish this weird occurrence that happens sometimes. Also, I think it's necessary to note that I have had a huge plummet in sex drive this past 2 weeks, and I usually have a high libido. And so I feel smothered by my very low maintenance partner. I know this is most likely a me issue and need some advice on how to deal with it. What do we think? If we had a friend come to us sharing this, and you guys are the relationship experts and you come to these classes, what do you guys think? How do you think you would respond to this one?
Can you summarize the situation again quickly?
Yeah. So pretty much, both people are quite independent. Nobody's complaining, but the girl in the situation feels like she needs even more distance recently, and she feels bad about it. and she's asking what she could do. She needs advice. She also has noticed in the last 2 weeks her sex drive has plummeted, and she wants advice on what she should do. What do we think? Yes, the kind of man.
Well, honestly, this one's a tricky one because my honest opinion is that this is probably stemming from more like deep-rooted trauma type stuff, and with that kind of subject matter, it's always best served with the proper professional. So, the first thing I would say, just to anyone that came to me with this, is, are you seeing a therapist? If not, have you considered it? Just because it's always good to open up that outlet. But beyond that, honestly, I think that it would be worth suggesting, especially having to do with the attachment category, that they might be trying to avoid something, maybe something from prior relationships in their life. And if it happens with all of their relationships, it's definitely going to be connected to a relationship, maybe not that. I'm no expert, and I've not studied a whole ton on this end of the relationship side of things, but it might be worth it to suggest to them to try to make a point to have an engagement with their partner that is where they both get a little gussied up and try to look good for one another to kind of spark that a little bit, get some of that more close proximity, the engagement going on, but don't push it too far. So something like a date night where it can be go meet up. Because I don't know if I heard it right, but I think you'd mentioned in that they only saw each other roughly once a week or so. And that's understandably going to be tough for everybody for a multitude of different reasons. So just politely suggesting to kind of re-engage some of that interaction again, but with the nature of, they're adults in a relationship. So you'd want to encourage something like maybe a night out at somewhere that's going to lead you to a fun time afterwards type of theme. Nothing over the top, but just something comfortable. But that's what I would throw out there for that.
I appreciate that. Yep. When you're not unsure, like a therapist could definitely, bring more knowledge to the situation. Also, you threw in some positive interactions there. That's always a good thing. And you touched on it being maybe something deeper involved, and you mentioned maybe it could be trauma related or something else, or this is happening in the past. And you mentioned they do see each other about once a week, if even. And so those are great points. We actually have a response from this Reddit question, which usually doesn't happen, but we actually have an update. So before we go into the update, does anyone else want to weigh in on anything that this scenario brought up for them, or how they would handle if a friend came to them with this situation? Okay, I think I might have scared you guys off with the update. All right, so I would say before I even read the update, kind of when I read this one, for me, I thought, immediately, like the first thing is if you are feeling, more distant from your partner, honestly tell them that you're feeling more distant. If you keep this in, it's going to get bigger and bigger and you're going to feel more and more distant from them. So, if you just realize you are wanting more distance, say that to them. I'm honestly feeling like I want more distance. If you don't know why you want more distance, you can even say that. I don't even know why I want more distance, but I just feel like I need it right now. Is that something that you can give me? And then you can just start that conversation, but at least the person knows kind of how you're feeling and where you're at. And, it's very likely that they know a lot about kind of your life so far and what you're going through, or maybe they can ask you questions. Has something happened, or what's, when did you start feeling this way, and try and like figure it out. Or even as a therapist, that's usually the questions that I would ask. And so, having that honest conversation and knowing it's okay to feel more distant sometimes or more anxious sometimes. This isn't like the end of the world, or like you were so weird or crazy for feeling this way. It seems like they're both on the avoidant side, and they both seem comfortable with it. Like she wasn't really complaining about not seeing him that much. They were both they were happy, but it's when she wanted that extra distance that she felt like there's something wrong with her. And so whenever there's any change, you're human, you're going to have different emotions. We slide on this spectrum of anxiousness and attachment all the time. So it's okay. No huge cause for freaking out too bad, or thinking it's the end of the world, or your relationship's going to end, or you don't love them, or something like that. But just have that honest conversation and try and figure it out together. And if you do have access to a therapist, they can help clear this up quite quickly if they're good at what they do. And so with the update that this person provided us, we can kind of get an insight into what was going on for her. So her update on this story was, I thought I would share. Me and my fiance are doing great. I had a lot going on and dealing with a death in the family, nursing school coming to an end, so huge workload, moving out soon, and planning for a wedding. I didn't actually take a step back to realize that this was definitely a lot of pressure, and automatically assumed something had to be wrong with me for feeling overwhelmed and channeling that energy towards other aspects of my life. My fault in this situation was not being able to take a look at how chaotic my situation currently is and not communicating this with others. Thank Thankfully, I'm doing much better, and a lot of you had amazing advice, minus a few whose first instinct is to give up and cut losses. Now I'm actually the one trying to get my fiance to free up schedule a bit, within reason, of course, but I wanted to thank everyone for their help and let them know I'm doing a lot better. So it looks like, as soon as she opened up about these things, and there was a lot going on for her, we would have had no idea she had all that on her plate. But, I'm glad that she became aware, or other people noticed that she was handling a lot. And, as soon as that came out and they talked about it and she realized it's okay to feel overwhelmed, anyone would probably feel overwhelmed in that situation, then she actually felt better and she wanted to spend more time with him. And that brought her back more to, wanting even more time with him, which was the opposite of her problem before. So sometimes it really is just as easy as that. And we can really magnify things in our head and just think things are so bad, or why are we feeling this way? We shouldn't be feeling this way. There's a lot of pressure we put on ourselves for how we should feel in situations. And a lot of the time, it's okay to feel how you feel and just be honest, and we can go from there and figure it out together. Okay, great job, you guys. Let's go to the next one. All right, so the next one is... Okay, the next one is, my boyfriend gave me an odd gift. I am not sure how to feel about it. Okay, so this one really touches on maybe some love languages. Yeah, let's see. So it's a 25-year-old male and a 22-year-old female, and it's about an odd gift. So I started seeing my boyfriend 2 years ago and moved in with him almost exactly a year ago. He gave me a gift of $2,500 on the anniversary of moving in. It was a lot of money, and he told me why when he gave it to me. He said that he didn't want me to ever feel like I was financially trapped with him. He handles most of the finances in the home, and I chip in for dates sometimes. Most of the money at the moment goes to finishing school. He told me that he grew up with a mother who couldn't leave her physically and emotionally abusive relationship because of money, and that even though he's not either of those things, he wants to make me feel as safe as possible. He mentioned that he'd like me to save the money for a rainy day. I just told him that I have no idea how to react to this, but just said thank you. After that, we just started talking about our days and things like that, almost as if it never happened. It's still not gnawing at me, though, and I am not sure how to bring it up. This is a lot of money, and I have no feelings of leaving him or anything of that sort. What kind of behavior is this? So let's say we have a friend that comes to us with this. They've been given $2,500 from their boyfriend saying, here it is for a rainy day, just in case you ever need it. I don't want you to feel like you're stuck with me. You have means to be able to, get yourself out of the situation if you need. And, she's feeling this way. How do we react to someone coming to us with a situation like that and wanting advice? Who's got any ideas? Ooh, hand, go for it. Can a man.
I always have ideas.
Love it. Love it.
This one, honestly, I think is a lot more simple in my mind to me because
Mhm.
it to me it just looks like misunderstood generosity. And the key thing is the gift from him is coming from maybe, and I'm not going to read into it too far, but maybe because he feels like he couldn't save his mom from that situation, so he wants to make sure that he's able to show like that's maybe how he's like you mentioned love language. He's showing how much he loves her because that's what he would have done for his mom but can't. So he's going to make sure he does it for her just in case. And this is touching on some personal notes for me because with my ex, she'd been through a lot of abusive relationships. And the first thing I told her, because my parents aren't the best, and I witnessed some behavior that was not the best as a kid. So early on, one of the things that was very much clarified by me was, hey, I will always be here for you until the moment you tell me to leave, just in case if my behavior gets anything like that. And I always respected that and never mistreated her and was always conscientious of it because of that. So digressing a little bit there, I think it is just a love language. It's his way of saying and showing how much he cares. And to her, I would simply say, look at the action for what it is. He worked hard to earn a resource, which is something we all use in different ways. And he's saying, take it. No stipulations. I love you. That's it. So that is what it is. It is a gift. And it's all in how she wants to look at it. If she chooses to see it as what it is, a kind gift and a gesture of love, beautiful. If all she can see it as is something that makes her uncomfortable and a little worried, I would just suggest, maybe think about why does that make you feel that way. Dive down a little bit and see if maybe that's something going on for you that's making it so maybe you're not able to accept it in the way that it's coming across. But and I won't keep going on it because again, no trained professional, but could be something with her love language too. Just maybe not her way of communicating it maybe doesn't mesh well yet. Always underlined by communication. Communication is key.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much for your opinion. Before I weigh in, I want to give anyone else the floor to be able to share their comments if they have any. Love you guys to request to speak. We love hearing people come up and hear their opinions. Oh, Armand, I see your hand.
Yeah, I thought, misunderstood generosity is like the perfect terminology to classify it with. Yeah, I think the first thing she should do is she should just tell him that, how she feels. And they don't have to solve it or do anything about it, but she should just tell him. On the other side of things, I kind of see where she's coming from because, like, I've heard of a lot of situations where people move in. I'm sorry, I hear where he's coming from. I've heard a lot of situations where people move in together, and then, they break up, and it's like, they don't know what to, like, someone gets cheated on, or they don't know what to do. It's because, like, I can't leave this place because, I can't afford to, like, pay the rent. I'm on the lease and stuff. So, this definitely helps with that issue. If I was her, the advice I would give to her is to tell him. I'm sorry, if I was her friend, the advice I'd give to her is, one, to tell him, and after doing that, even though it's really hard, to just kind of accept it. And if one day we get married or something like that, I'd use the $2,500 to get a gift for him, or take him on a surprise trip, or do something nice for both of us together.
Oh, that's so sweet. That actually got me, that just paying it back to them in a lovely way to make them feel loved. That was a very sweet idea. Yeah, and that terminology you both used, I think, was really spot on. Well done, you guys. So I think you guys covered
Well,
those
it's his terminology, it's not my terminology.
okay. That's very true. He was his terminology and you used it. Yeah, so I think you guys covered those parts really well. So absolutely have that conversation, realize where he's coming from, and then just don't keep this in. If you're feeling certain ways about it, it's okay to feel whatever you feel. Just express it so you're both on the same page of knowing what you guys are feeling like. The other element that I want to get into further with this to think about is, as humans, by default, we show love the way we want to receive love. And so the main takeaway from love languages that I really honed in on, so it's great that the book has simplified it to 5 things, and it's, we can take the free quiz that's like 30 questions and figure out what we appreciate most. That's great. It does give us an insight into these things. But the main take home message that we need to realize is that no two people are identical, and our partner receives love usually very different to how we receive love. And that's just mind blowing for us to understand a lot of the time, because it doesn't make sense to us. We're like, we don't feel love like that, so it doesn't make sense that someone else would feel love like that. And that's just not true. So much misunderstanding can come from this. For example, if he is expecting her to be like, so appreciative and just like be all over him and say thank you, and just have this reaction, because if someone did this for him, like, honestly, like, this would just like move him to his core, because this is so important to him. So if he's expecting that sort of reaction from her and she doesn't give that to him, it doesn't mean that either of them are wrong. It's just they receive love differently. She hasn't gone through all the stuff that he's gone through, and it absolutely, he's doing such a generous gift that's so thoughtful and kind. I don't think we can ignore that. I think everybody can acknowledge that that's a kind thing. But if there's certain interactions that are being expected when we give each other gifts, that part is, we shouldn't judge too hard. It's just we receive love differently. So I think a helpful thing after she brings it up and has this conversation is to kind of share what she really appreciates as gifts in the future. Like, she super acknowledges and appreciates what he's done, but it's probably a good chat to talk about what you guys appreciate in the future. Or maybe, honestly, she really thought when they walked past a cake shop and she was like, oh my gosh, this is my favorite cake. I love this cake. Maybe she was expecting like he would bring out a cake or something. And then she's just really disappointed that it's not a cake and it's something else. So we have no idea what's going on or what she appreciates as a gift. But this is such a huge one for any couple to figure out, especially because people have birthdays, especially because people usually have anniversaries. And some people might not even care about gifts. They're like, we just want to spend time together and do something fun, or whatever it is for you guys, you need to figure that out. I know with Arman and I, honestly, it took so many years. For us not to get sad when we get each other gifts, because it's just, that one was a hard one for us to learn. It's probably funny to a lot of you guys that this one took us so long, but to this day, like, we still kind of freak out when we get each other gifts, because we don't know we don't know if we did a good enough job. So yeah, you don't feel alone, you guys, if you've gotten gifts wrong or you haven't reacted a certain way that your partner thought you should react for a gift or something like that. And this can apply to any sort of way of feeling loved. It's a very easy example when it comes to birthdays and gifts. Arman, I saw you unmute.
Yeah, your birthday's coming up and I'm shaking in my boots. My God. We used to cry so much on birthdays. We'd get each other just like exactly the wrong thing. The person would be like, "How could you do this? Don't you know me at all?"
Oh my gosh.
So bad.
No, honestly, you guys, like, for example, for his birthday, like, I would get him, like, all of these things. I would think, oh my gosh, I'm being so thoughtful. I would remember all of these things. And then, like, it's like he didn't want all these gifts. He, like, wanted one thing that he really wanted, like this book. And at one point, I was like, I'm just getting it wrong so much. I'm just going to ask him. I'm going to be unromantic, and I'm just going to ask him what he wants. And I think, like, he was just like, I want this book.
He got me the book.
And I got him the book, and I felt like such a failure. I was like, this is pathetic. Like, I can't
It
even
was
get my
amazing.
and then he had like the best reaction, and it just made no sense to me. It's just mind blowing, and it really is. It probably is. You guys probably don't experience this, but you might experience this in a different way. But yeah, so we're growing, we're learning, we're getting better. Kind of men.
I was just going to briefly say the gift giving process on both ends is different for everybody. Everyone's got a different expectation of how to give the gift, of how to get the gift, of how to pick it out. Some people have some pretty weird rituals, but it all boils down to the same thing you keep talking about and underlining: communication. And it may take some time, but patience, love, and communication are the three kind of keys that make it possible. And just like you guys are talking about, it took a while, but hey, it didn't stop anything, didn't hold anything back. It was just a fun little speed bump for a little while.
I appreciate you. And just so you guys know, we've been together for like 8 years and happily married for 4 years. And like right now, we feel like maybe we're getting to a place where we have a pretty good shot at birthdays, but even now we're still a bit shaking in our boots. So sometimes like it's not a quick fix, but you're getting better every time, hopefully, learning from it and improving. So great job, you guys. That was a really good insight. So let's see, one last one, and then we'll wrap up for today. Okay, so this is another feeling smothered one. So this is a 29-year-old female. I feel smothered in my relationship, and I'm not sure how to communicate it. I have been seeing this guy, 33-year-old male, for 6 months long distance. He is a great guy, and we have a lot in common, so on so many levels, and I think he's such a great match for me. On the other hand, I feel emotionally smothered by him, and it's causing me to lose attraction. For context, he was physically and emotionally abused by his mother as a child and at adolescence, and then she abandoned his family when he was a teenager. He seems emotionally stable but is able to express himself to me in a healthy way and talk through issues. However, he is incredibly clinging and needy and gets scared, and he put it oh, sorry, the wording isn't too good. He put it when I don't reply to him sooner than later. He is incredibly fearful of losing me, and he told me that and would overdo it with attention and affection often, which has become overwhelming. Sometimes I just want some space and like him back, but he doesn't give it to me. He is always telling me how much he likes me and misses me and how strongly he feels about me. He said he feels dependent on our communication, and when he doesn't have it, he feels sad. Recently, there was an evening where I didn't communicate with him much, and he said he felt sick and nervous and thought I was done with him. I don't want to hurt him by bringing this up, but I feel like I need to in order for this to last. How can I tell him? Yes, the Candyman.
This is a quick one I'm going to jump on because it touches on stuff that if I could be right, I could be wrong. And again, first thing I would always recommend to anybody is go seek professional help, just because it's always worth talking to someone who knows what they're talking about, like has studied it and all that jazz. But based on everything that was said, it's screaming to me that because of the childhood trauma, especially correlating with, we'll say mom, probably during the younger ages, there's a very high likelihood that he has some form of dissociation, could even be all the way down to dissociative identity disorder, which is multiple personality disorder. Now, only reason I bring this up is because what it sounds like is if he seems stable, if he comes off as stable, she's describing him like that, he clearly has a good portion of himself that is able to function in society. So clearly he can come off as pretty good. But when you get to a more emotional level, which of course is going to come out in a relationship, and this is something I've dealt with firsthand, you see all sides of the person, even if they don't realize they're showing certain sides of themselves. And what is naturally very clingy and in need and craving a child. So I would hesitate to suggest, even to this person, that maybe there's a younger part of him that went through some trauma, which we know about because it was mentioned, that has some attachment issues and needs, maybe it's the love language of them, maybe it's a baseline need that isn't quite met because of some unresolved trauma. The one thing I would stress is to just keep communicating, keeping patient, keeping understanding, and keeping open to listening whenever they express these levels of emotional response, and try to be empathic and understanding with it. But I would definitely stress trying to go to some form of like a counseling session where that person could sit in with the other person and maybe try to work with some of those younger, more traumatized parts. Because that's one thing I don't recommend people do in relationships on the fly, because trying to deal with the younger forms, the younger identities and personalities, that level of trauma, you can pull out more than a person's ready to handle. So I will always stress, don't try to dive into it, but just be aware that there could be something there. Continue to treat with empathy, continue to treat with love and compassion until you're able to help them identify, when they're ready, identify what it is they're kind of stuck on. And I stress the when they're ready part only because with my own personal experience, there were certain traumas we knew were there. We could not try to talk about, we couldn't try to address because it would risk the stability of, my ex. So, and I'm putting that just because some people have been through more than we know, and we never know what another person's been through. So always tread carefully, always love and compassion. This is something I could go on for a while about, but very passionate about the subject.
Thank you. Thank you. So much good wisdom there. Absolutely. Absolutely. I saw Hideous Hackers, you became a speaker. So happy to have you on. Would you like to say a few words on this one?
Hey, it's Jim here. Yeah, Cannaman is spot on with this. And the only thing I wanted to add to what he said was that if only these people knew about Love Story Unicorn NFTs and like the free lifetime relationship counseling sessions that they offer, 2 per year, something like that. I don't know, but
I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Yeah, we do have each NFT gives you a lifetime supply of sessions with a relationship expert. And to start out, it's always me helping everyone. And I give it's at least 2 sessions. So I try and give people as many sessions as they need to be able to get where they want to be. And it's like I really wanted to remove the barrier of cost and make it as cheap as possible to not like limit people from being able to get just that knowledge that we didn't get growing up. And the accessibility. So it's, as easy as text or phone call or video chat, whatever it is. So yes, that's an option. I appreciate you, Jim. Thank you so much for coming up. Was there anything else you wanted to say, or that was the main thing?
that was the main thing.
Oh,
And just it's been a good space, really good space.
thank you.
I'm enjoying Armand's commentary as well. You guys are sweet. Yeah,
I appreciate
I know it's all just, perfect all the time.
it. Did you not hear us crying at our
No,
birthdays? Like,
no, I'm kidding. I know you guys work through it, but that's what it's all about. I've been married, I don't know,
We
30
cry
years.
a lot.
So.
oh my God. We cry less now, though.
If there was a graph of the amount of our crying, it would definitely be going on the downwards direction.
No,
It would
he's
have a
kidding,
negative
guys.
slope.
Guys, don't listen to him.
No, it would have a negative
No, it would have
slope.
a negative. He's saying you'd
Oh,
cry less.
sorry. I'm sorry. I messed up my statistics there. Correct. It would have a negative.
No, you guys are great. And, honestly, and I have been married for 30 years. And, I should probably start crying a little bit more. It might be good. I don't know. But no, it's good. I learn something every week,
Oh,
even still. So thank you.
thank you. Thank you so much, Jim. Jim is, guys, happily married and in love and like amazing. So we so appreciate you being on there. And you have so much wisdom to give us. So thank you. Thank you. Armand, I see your hand.
Yeah, there's something I wanted to bring up. It's not in relationship to the question, but I think the con man, I think a couple of times brought up going and getting professional help. I know there are different types of psychologists and therapists depending on what you're looking for. So I guess, as an expert, like how would you go find the type of help that you need?
That's a good question. I usually don't bring up the therapist one because I don't want to be like, trying to fill my space or anything, or, I'm just trying to give you guys as much value as possible. But I think it's really, really important to pick, it's great to be open to increase your knowledge on these things. And, I've learned so much I've also spoken to a therapist once about relationships, and I've just learned so much from these, all the research done in this field and being open to it. So there's definitely so much knowledge that we can gain out of it. The only thing I want to caution you guys with therapists is it's really important that if you don't click with your therapist or you don't feel like they're giving you good information, like it's not you, it's them. And find someone else. Don't put up with a bad therapist, because honestly, having worked, as a psychologist for a year and having known so many psychologists, and even in Australia, working 2.5 years with the Government Health Complaints Commission, taking complaints about psychologists and therapists in mental health, there are so many people that are psychologists or therapists that really don't have their life together and haven't are not giving good information out. And I don't want even for 1 second someone to doubt themselves because someone's given them bad information. So just I want to caution you guys, there are great people out there, but if you don't if you don't find someone that you think that is giving you good information, please don't be scared to find someone else and be totally okay with just letting that go. The Canna Man, I see your hand.
I totally just want to second and agree with that, because as much as I stress, try out, therapy and go for it if you can. Not everyone has access to it, and not all therapists are good. So 100%, I always tell people, trust your gut. Go once, go twice. It's going to take you a few sessions before you even get to like the deep stuff anyways. So trust your gut. If session 1, you're like, back out from it. It's always better to just go talk to a friend and just vocalize it. You don't have to dive into the deep stuff. You don't have to get in anything super crazy if you're not comfortable, but it's always better to just go talk to a friend if you do try therapy. And like you said, you end up with someone who's not so good. I've known people who have gone to plenty of therapists, and the consensus is usually most of them suck, and rarely do they click. But when they do, it can be very helpful. So I just want to completely agree with you.
I appreciate you. And when you do find a good therapist, like, you hold on to them, and you tell your friends about them, because like, as you said, it is hard to find. And I've been behind those curtains where I know what psychologists are like in their personal life, like the advice they give. And it just like sometimes really, really shocks me. I'm like, you're the one like giving advice to someone else. Oh my goodness. But then another thing that also is at play here, and I want you guys to know that I'm not trying to put you off like therapists or psychologists. There are good people out there, and do search for them. It's worth searching for them and finding them. But the other thing I want to caution you guys, just so you know, is when you work as a psychologist, usually, someone is getting treatment through health insurance, and health insurance requires the psychologist to diagnose you with a mental health disorder. And that's, a very different approach than someone who's going there to get skills. My whole thing is like emphasizing on meeting people where they're at and teaching them the skills that they want to learn to get where they want to go. But sometimes just giving people these diagnoses, and maybe they don't have these diagnoses, but they're just getting diagnosed just so they can get access to treatment. That is something in itself. And another thing is in therapy, because there's so many sessions back to back, the psychologist or therapist usually doesn't have time to go back and make a plan of how to help the person. And so I worked at 2 different clinics, and the first clinic was just blew my mind with how bad it was, and the second one was really great. And the first one, I was so shocked that this clinic even existed. But I was just being told that I need to, I've been trained in clinical behavioral psychology, which is so good. We have so much wisdom there. If anyone says they specialize in behavioral psychology, guys, that's like a really positive thing. Like, that is what you want to be moving towards. Like, that is the good stuff. That's where all the evidence is in psychology. But, more the counseling stuff, I was just being told to get the client to just speak. Like, just get them to speak as much as possible, I was told, and that I'm not allowed to say anything. And the only thing I'm allowed to say to them is, to pick the emotion that they're talking about and say, tell me more about that emotion that you're feeling. And I just thought that was a joke. Like, are you kidding me? Like, we've learned so many things to help people, and that is not the solution. Like, I wasn't even allowed to give people any advice, which is, I feel like that's why they're here, like, to gain knowledge, not just to speak. I feel like if someone's there to speak, they can potentially have other people they can speak to. So yeah, definitely, I would say it's a really strong good idea, maybe in the first therapy session, or just when you're reading the about section of a therapist or a clinic. See if they're skill oriented, and if their orientation is behavioral oriented, or they've done any sort of behavioral psychology. That's usually a really good sign. And do they, like, are they there to teach you skills, or are they there to hear and validate what you're saying? Like, the 2 completely different spectrums of therapists. So I'm on the school of thought that we should be giving you guys as much value as possible with knowledge, and then let you guys decide on your own what you think is best. And then there's the other side where they just tell you to talk as much as possible and do nothing else. So just know that that's like a thing that could potentially happen. And if they do that and you feel like, oh, is this therapy that I just go talk about my feelings and nothing happens? Like, that's not good therapy. And if that's what you're experiencing, I'm sorry. And if you want more, there definitely is more to it. That's not like what the entire field of therapy is. So I think it's really good for you guys to know that difference. So thank you for the question, Armand. I don't like talking about it so much because I don't want to put people off getting good knowledge, but I think it's important in any field. Just like any teacher can be good, any doctor can be good, also any therapist can be good, and it's not you. And it's very difficult because you're going in when you feel like you need help emotionally, and it's just psychologists and therapists are put in such a position of power to influence you. So I hope you find someone, or have really good contact with someone that has your best interest, has the skills, has the knowledge to be able to help you. Zal, I see I'll just bring you up. This is so exciting. We're having people come up and speak. I always get excited when people come up and speak. Zol, I see you became a speaker. Was there anything you wanted to say?
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering your opinion on cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah, great question. So that's the most kind of advertised therapy that's probably out there for the last, I want to probably say for the last 20 years or so. And the behavioral part is great. So the word behavioral is in there, so that's good. But what they're seeing in the last 10 years, there's been a shift in psychology and research psychology. So they're realizing that the cognitive part, if you remove
For
the
people who don't know, like me, what is cognitive
oh,
behavioral therapy?
okay, my bad. So behavioral, let's start with what behavioral therapy is. So behavioral therapy is when we focus on actions and what actions can make the situation better. And obviously there's emotions and things around the attachment, so we can't avoid it. We would still have to address those things. But to create change that can be observed and show improvement, where it can be tracked and it can be actually like evidence for behavior change, because that's what we can observe as improvement. So that the focus is on that. And so the cognitive part is, for example, psychologists in the last 50 years or so think that they've mapped out the mind and how our mind works in different systems. And one of the main systems that they work with is like a computer model of how our brain works. And so then they make assumptions of when this happens and this happens, and there's all these things at play, and those things are important, like your beliefs, and like this belief is related to this feeling, and then there's just all of these things that are not observable that they have made theories around. So that's the cognitive part. And so generally it makes sense if someone says, oh, your mind needs to be on the same page as your actions and things like that. So that's why they thought cognitive behavioral therapy is the best way, because it combines both of these things. But what they've realized when they've researched this further, and they've done a lot of studies on it, is that if they look at cognitive behavioral therapy and behavioral therapy as, they say they want to see who did better. They see behavioral psychology did better. And then if they do cognitive behavior therapy, so then they did further studies and they're like, okay, let's do cognitive behavioral therapy and let's do just the cognitive part and just the behavioral part. And so they saw that there's, with cognitive part in there or not in there, it's the same result. So the cognitive part isn't adding anything. And then they've tried to test the cognitive part in so many different ways, and they haven't been able to prove that it exists. Honestly, it's just someone drawing a mind map of what they think the brain, like how the brain works, and there's no real way to be able to prove it. So now they're trying to figure out what to do with that, since they've created such a big name out of cognitive behavioral therapy. But because the behavioral part is in there, it's still good, and it's still widespread. So I don't want to say it's bad, because it's got the behavioral part, which is the main part, but just keep that in mind, that the cognitive part, don't put too much weight on it. The kind of man.
First off, I just wanted to say that was a phenomenal question, and I very much enjoyed hearing the answer to that. And this is just a kind of a loose, lighthearted question, more just your opinion. Do you think they're just way too early for that cognitive perspective on it? Or do you think it's just kind of just an outlandish, probably doesn't click with anything? Or do you want to share your opinion?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. So from the models I've seen in in the cognitive psychology part, like I can see where they're trying to get at. Like I'm like, all right, I can see that they're trying to connect these dots. But I don't like, it's because we can't measure it. It's really hard to track progress or realize that two people can have so much different their minds can work so much differently. So I don't know how much benefit it is in putting so much emphasis in that. Just like pain, like I want you guys to realize there's something like that in psychology. So there's private events, which all private events are things that we can't measure. So emotions are private events. They can't take your blood and see how much love is in it or how much pain you're feeling. And this is, when you're having a headache or when you're feeling, just anything, all of these things are, private events or internal things that cannot be measured. So as soon as we start dealing with putting so much emphasis on these things that we can't measure, it makes our job so much more complicated and harder. And what they learned with more and more research is that when your actions change, your mind changes with your actions, because people in general feel they are how they behave. And so things from what I've observed myself and from everybody that I've come into contact with and from the research I've learned that is the shortcut way, as in it doesn't need to be drawn out where you go to like 500 years of therapy to get to the other side. Because if I try and convince you for 10 hours why you shouldn't believe the thing that you believe, you can at the end of the day be like, no, I still believe what I believe. Or like, I'm still scared of this spider. Like, there's nothing you're going to say logically or however you frame it that I'm not going to be scared of this spider. But, for example, and that's a great one I actually brought up. So, for example, I'm trying to remember the exact terminology. I think it's gradual desensitization. I feel like there's a fancier word for it, but they realized with things that we're fearful of, like with OCD and things like that, they tried talking to people and saying like, the spider's not going to be able to kill you. Like, it's got no venom in it or whatever it is, cockroach. And it's just, you couldn't convince someone, no matter how you tried with your words to kind of address the cognitive part of it, you could not get through, and you're just wasting your time. Like, people have tried this for so long. But then if you see a picture of a cockroach or you touch the picture of the cockroach and then you have the cockroach in the same room, like these are all behavioral things, and then eventually can get to a point and then you realize, hey, I'm a person that can hold the cockroach. And you're like, wow, like well, maybe that means I'm not scared of the cockroach. And like, there's no way I could have convinced you that with words until you did it yourself, if that makes sense. The kind of man, I see your hand.
No, that really does make complete sense. And I wanted to share an example as well that is on more the deeper end of things, but it kind of really touches on, I agree. I really do agree. And with multiple personality disorder, DID, there's a lot of traumatic memories. And those traumatic memories are chunked up with different personality states kind of held separately. Now, no matter what you do, you can never, ever, ever, ever tell a person who's been through extreme trauma, it's not a big deal. Here's how to think through it. You can't talk it through like that. You just can't. The real way that it actually happens, and this is something I have seen more times than I care to count, and I hope that very few people in life ever have to deal with, but in somebody with an extreme form of that condition, when a severe trauma comes up to the surface, the person relives it. It's what PTSD flashbacks are. And I'm not going to get into any details on classifying anything or defining anything, but they basically lose themselves in that instance back into that reality they experienced from the trauma. To them, in that moment, that is real. That is all real. It is reality. It is their reality. So you can't, just from my own experience having witnessed it, you can't in any capacity simply just talk through, dismiss, or work your way through the word side of things of that. All you can do, just in the circumstance, just to cap off the thought, is be there for them, help them through it, and once they face that instance, it then lessens, and that's where that desensitizing concept really comes into play. Because after the traumas come back to the surface and they've relived it once, and that personality state sees and realizes, aka grounds to like the reality of the now, realizes, hey, I'm not still stuck in that loop, then it starts to get less. It starts to not be so bad. There's a whole nother layer of where that goes and how that's processed. But just to totally agree and reaffirm that thought, I think it's never going to be as simple as just the cognitive side of it as you're defining it.
Yeah, thank you so much for your personal experiences on, working through these in your own life and kind of making, figuring this out all on your own. And, you've kind of figured out what research has figured out, which is so awesome. So I'm really proud of you for, just giving such good information without being, having all the training behind you. So that's awesome. You were spot on there. Actually, this trauma stuff ties really well to this last question that we were addressing. So this guy, if we can just remind ourselves again, this guy, was just being clingy, and he had a traumatic past, and she was feeling like he was just coming on a little too strong, and she didn't know how to bring it up. So I just made some quick points I wanted to touch on that is related about this stuff. So one thing is talking about trauma. And so I don't know if you guys hopefully you guys were here and you listened. But like, for example, I tell people that my father was abusive and his family was abusive. And in some of the Twitter spaces I go on, I say, my parents went through a 10-year court divorce proceeding that went from when I was 12 to 22. And so I have, thank goodness that from a very young age, I've been able to share this without getting emotional, because I've said it so many times and I've been so open with it that it doesn't affect me. It's not, yeah, it was like really bad, but it doesn't have that emotional hold on me the way that it would have been if I never told anyone, or, just blocked that memory, kept repressing it, kept wanting to avoid all my thoughts. Like whenever that thought comes up, I would tell myself, I shouldn't be thinking about this. I shouldn't be as soon as you tell yourself you shouldn't be thinking about something, the more and more it comes to your mind naturally. That's how our brain works. So that's why just being kind of flexible with myself, being able to be open with it and talk about it is something that's really helped me. So, if someone else in my situation had gone through it, maybe they would have reacted very differently. So, and one of the treatments that they have for traumatic situations, just like you said, is getting the person in a safe environment with a therapist to repeat the traumatic experience, to say it enough times where they don't have to, have so many strong emotions attached to it, or, even in the sense that if they've never opened up about it, to be able to open up about it. So that's one of the things that they found has been the most effective thing for helping with trauma. So that's just a cool little fun fact that you guys know, that Kahneman hit on the head with that one. So absolutely. The other thing that, it seems like she hasn't brought this up before, and he keeps being anxious and clingy, how she defines it. And so the more if she doesn't bring this up quickly, she's going to be acting more distant, and he's going to be acting more anxious. So he's probably a little anxious to begin with. She said he was pretty healthy in the way she described it, but it's going to push him to be even more anxious, and she's going to be pushed to be even more avoidant. So in situations like that, where there is a natural difference between you guys, where one is a little more anxious, one is a little more avoidant, or one is healthy and one is more avoidant or anxious, it's really important to address things quickly, because if you don't, it pushes you guys to the other ends of the spectrum, and it feels like, oh my gosh, this person is suffocating me, or oh my gosh, I don't even want to spend another minute with this person. They're just like, it's too much. And they weren't always like that. It became like that because you guys kept avoiding it, and it triggered you guys both in the opposite direction of these spectrums. And you're not usually acting like this in normal times. So that's why it's so important to address it quickly, so you guys can, figure it out quicker and not push each other. You can come closer together rather than pushing each other on opposite sides. The other thing that I wanted to highlight is, maybe he just doesn't understand what is a normal time to respond. So I think one of the things that she brought up was, when she doesn't message for a little bit, he thinks that she doesn't love him anymore. And so, just establishing what you both think is a reasonable time to respond is a really important one in any relationship. Even if it didn't come up in normally, every relationship should have this conversation. So from the people I've spoken to in general, usually people expect a response from their partner within a few hours. Usually there's an exception when someone's at work, or, if they don't respond within a few hours, they let them know that, there was this big thing today, I'm sorry, or hey, like there's this thing happening, I'm probably not going to be responsive for, this long, just cut me a bit of slack or something. And generally within 24 hours, when it gets more than 24 hours of not responding, it can get quite tricky. So for example, it would be really great for them to talk about what their levels of like responsiveness is. And in general, if she says, look, if I don't respond within 3-4 hours, like I'll respond within 3-4 hours, but if I'm not responding, in 3 hours, like it doesn't mean I don't love you. And, that's something he'll have to practice and learn and realize it's okay if she doesn't respond in 3-4 hours, but she will respond, or she'll let him know. And so that will kind of bring him back to like a healthy level of a relationship where they can both be happy with it and know that nobody's leaving nobody. Like they both love each other and they can give each other the amount of, togetherness and independence that they both need. So it's something I wanted to touch on. And another thing that I wanted to bring up is when each of us get upset, we can want different things. And so one thing I wanted to highlight is with Armand and I, when we get upset, I know for me, especially at the beginning of our relationship for quite a few years, actually, if I did something that upset Armand, especially during long distance, it would just be amplified. Like I would feel really like unstable because I want my relationship to be working, as like I specialize in relationships, so I'm super sensitive to it, and so I feel really scared when I've made him upset, like back in the day. And when we were together, like I would want him to be able to be physically close to me, or still be able to like kiss me or these things. And this was something very hard for him to do, because if I did something that upset him, that was the last thing he wanted to do, was to be physical with me in any way. And so that was a difference that we both had to work through and realize it's not that he doesn't love me. Like he is, he needs some time, he needs some space, like he's hurting, and this is not how he feels loved. And this may be how I feel loved, but he's the one that's upset right now. And so I need to respect him and what he needs. And so I got better at that. I had to practice that. And then, we were able to, get much better at handling our conflict, when now, we're at a place where every night, no matter how upset we are, we can resolve it to the point where he can still kiss me goodnight and say, I love you. So that took a lot of work to get to. And naturally, we had these differences of what we want, in terms of closeness and independence when we're upset. But it's something that we have to respect each other, what each other needs, and be able to give our person love the way they better way they receive it. And, that's an easy way where both people can get upset is like, well, I feel loved if you are physical with me. And the other one's like, I don't feel loved when you're physical with me because I'm upset at you. And so we have two people upset, but we got to remember that the first person that got upset, that verbalized it, they got upset first, and the other person just has to give them what they need. So activate the rule of who got upset first and respect that until that person is in a good place. And then you can say why you're upset about something. Armand, did you want to say anything on this one? I know this is one that you felt strongly about. I remember back in the day more.
The who got upset first, or was it something?
No, the stuff with the when you were when I made you upset and you didn't want to be physical with me, and that was kind of hard for me to wrap my head around, and it took me a while to kind of get that.
Yeah, it was bad. It was like it wasn't good. It was just...
Guys, we're very honest people, guys. Like, we're not hiding anything. Like, you're gonna hear it as it is.
Yeah, because it was like, I would be upset and I wouldn't want to touch her, but she would try to like touch me and I would pull away, and that would make her upset. And it's like, now I'm upset and I've made her upset and I have to deal with her being upset, and it was just upsetting.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. Do I have a lot of words on it? Just people deal with stuff in different ways. Yeah, sometimes you gotta let people deal with stuff how they deal with it a little bit, I guess. Yeah, I don't have any profound anything.
Well, I wanted to, so on this topic, and one of the reasons, and I realized, with time, we got better at resolving conflict, and so it wouldn't get to that intensity.
To be fair, like you said, yeah, we've gotten better at conflict, and at some point, whatever, maybe months or years later, I got you can now touch me with a finger when I'm upset, with a single finger, so that's better. I don't know. There's improvement, I guess.
Yeah, I can touch him with a single finger. And the other thing I really want to mention is that because we've been able to figure out how each other feels loved in different situations, and we've gotten better at resolving a conflict where it doesn't get to the same intensity that it was in the past, he doesn't get as upset as he would in the past. So he wouldn't get to the point that often where he would feel like, I can't touch him. So it's just the frequency of getting to that level has really reduced. And that's why we can go to sleep every night and say I love you and kiss before bed. So I think that's a really important thing, that once you fine tune these skills and get better at it, these situations don't come up to that intensity the same way anymore. And you don't have that Armand, I see your hand.
Oh yeah, something else I want to say. You talk about saying I love you before you go to bed and stuff like that. I don't know. I feel like the key to doing that before, if that's something you think is important, I think the key to doing that is realizing that love is a decision, not an emotion, if that makes sense. You don't really have control over your emotions. Your body just, it just goes and does stuff. But you do make decisions. You can make decisions on how you feel about your emotions, and you can make decisions to go with them or go against them. Yeah. So I would say love is a decision.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's so, so valuable. That could be a whole topic itself, because it's important for us to express our emotions, you feel whatever you feel, but what we decide to do and our actions that come from it, those are things we make decisions about. And so it's really important to choose to be, choose the loving action, or choose the love, and not give into our emotions with our actions. So it's okay to feel it, but our actions are kind of our decisions with our actions are what's super important. Yeah, so because that can go into a whole topic. So thank you for sharing that with everyone. Before we wrap up, is there anything anyone wants to say, come up and speak or share anything at all? This is your time, your space. Yes, the kind of man.
Hey, I just wanted to take a second to say that this has been a wonderful space, and I love this conversation and all the thoughts that are shared. And I couldn't agree more with everybody on all the subjects here. And the one thing I would leave it off with, because I'm definitely not here to talk about anything I'm doing, because I hate doing that. The one thing I'll leave it off with is, this is the way I look at life in my mind. Love is very much a way of being. And in that, it is exactly like you said. It's a decision that we make. It's a conscious, unconscious effort, and it's the culmination of the two. It's when you find something, someone, an activity, a person, a place that you feel that connection with, and putting the effort into, whether it's preserve it, play it, do it, or be with the person. That's the way I look at it. And it is a lot of work. Love is a lot of work, and God it will mess you up at times. It'll be the hardest thing of your life, but it is also worth it. So it's definitely not something anyone should ever shelter themselves from. It's worth it to stub your toe to learn how to walk and run in a field. Trust me.
Thank you. I love that. I appreciate you so, so much. Thank you. Thank you. Honey, I saw you come up. Did you want to say some words?
Yeah, I wanted to say, glad I was able to make this space to experience you in the raw, right, here in the Twitter spaces. And, yeah, the things you're reading actually helped me deal with some, especially the conflict resolution part that you're talking on. So thank you on it. And Armand, the man of nothing profound, coming out with just bangers of profoundness. And, yeah, if you guys don't get the opportunity, you're hearing some Missouri cicadas. They're loud as hell. And I love them. So much love to all you guys as well.
Thank you. So much love to you guys. I really appreciate you coming up and saying the words. It's so nice to hear from people. And I know, like, anyone I speak to that are in these spaces, they always say, like, it's so great when people come up to speak and we hear people's opinions, and diversity is so awesome. And, there's so many times where people bring up points that I didn't even think of. And I'm like, that's so true. And, like, we should take this into consideration. And it's so good for everyone to hear that. And we all learn together. Like, I'm not perfect. Like, I have some good knowledge on stuff, but we can all help fill in the picture with our own experience and knowledge. And it's great hearing from different people because it makes us feel human and we're not alone, and everyone goes through this stuff and we're all fighting for love, and we all value how great it is and that it's worth it. And so I'm so proud of you guys. Well, hats off to you guys for being in this space, valuing love, wanting to increase your knowledge on it, bringing some laughter to the space. I think that's so important. We learn so much better when it's fun. So thank you so much for that. I'm really indebted to you all. And as always, I wish you guys all the love life of your dreams. It's so amazing when you have it, and I really wish that for all of you. A recap, we've been doing these classes every week for the last 20 weeks. And so in the next 3 weeks, I'm going to be in Europe. And so I'm going to post a short video at a normal time when we have these classes and teach you guys one quick skill. I'll really try and record that before we leave on Tuesday. And then we'll resume right back. As soon as I get back, we arrive on the morning of August 4th. So that Thursday on that week, I will be back on, and we're going to have an even bigger mental health space once a month that we're going to collab with Invisible Enemies and the Wild Guardians, which has a lot of emphasis on veterans, which I'm so excited about. And to hopefully we'll have even more people in the space caring about mental health and relationships and everything like that. So with that, thank you, everyone. And I wish you an amazing Thursday and, an awesome summer if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. All right. Thank you so much, guys. Bye, everyone.